Xenoforming. First Contact. By Roman Porubsky. To my family and friends, thank you for standing by me even in my darkest hours. In memory of my late grandmother. You may never read this version, but I like to believe you'd be proud that I never stopped writing. Prologue. Date 13th June 2024. Place Vienna, Austria. It was 11 o'clock at night, and the streets of Vienna's 7th district exhaled the quiet breath of a city gone to sleep. The usual weekday silence blanketed the neighborhood in calm, broken only by the occasional swish of passing traffic or the far-off clink of glassware from some distant window. Streetlights glowed dimly yellow, their pools of light gathering beneath the wrought-iron lamps like ghosts of warmth, throwing long, soft shadows against the cream-colored facades of the pre-war apartment blocks. The buildings stood solemn and tall, wrapped in ivy and memory, like guardians watching over the slumbering district. But one building broke the pattern. From its corner perch near a tram stop, a modest bar glowed defiantly. Its windows spilled amber light onto the sidewalk, and the muted throb of jazz pulsed softly through the glass. The sign above the door had been tastefully sanded down to give the impression of wear, though it was newer than it looked. Inside, vague silhouettes moved behind half-closed blinds, shapes occasionally tilting their heads to laugh or sip, or lean in conspiratorially. Across the street, parked in the shadows beneath a sleeping pharmacy sign, a black Audi sat motionless. It had been there since before the afternoon rush. Inside, Lucas hadn't shifted position for hours. He sat in the driver's seat, body angled uncomfortably as the weight of the day pressed deep into his spine. His age showed more in the quiet tension behind his eyes than in his face. Early 40s, unshaven, his dark ponytail now flattened slightly against the back of the headrest. The sleeves of his jacket were pushed up just enough to suggest heat inside the vehicle, though the windows were fogged faintly from his breath. A dull ache throbbed at the base of his neck. He shifted slightly to stretch one leg. It cramped anyway. The dash clock blinked green. 24 12 hours. He reached for a nearly empty plastic water bottle, tilted it back and drained the last few lukewarm drops. His stomach gurgled with discontent. A crumpled sandwich wrapper sat forgotten in the passenger footwell. The scent of stale bread and sweat clung to the upholstery. The air had grown stagnant. Still, Lucas's eyes never strayed long from the bar. Through binoculars, through the windshield, through sheer intuition, he'd monitored every comings and goings, every minor event. Darius Rossi, the man of the hour, had been the epitome of innocence all day. Affable, relaxed, present, the perfect host. No nervous glances, no strange handoffs, no known associates arriving. Not one verifiable link to criminal activity, despite the rumors. Despite the file. Lucas leaned back, rubbing at his temples with the heels of his palms. It was maddening. The surveillance, the reports, the dead ends. They all pointed to Rossi. But tonight, like every other night, the man had slipped through their net without breaking a sweat. He closed his eyes for a moment, just to rest them. Then, tap, tap. The knock at the window sent his heart surging. His eyes snapped open. A man stood just outside the driver's side window, bartender uniform, black vest, white shirt, pressed slacks. He held a small silver tray upon which sat a steaming cup of coffee and a porcelain plate with 4 neat biscuits, arranged like compass points. Lucas rolled the window down halfway. His fingers hovered near the emergency alarm beneath the dash. The bartender smiled politely.
"Compliments of Mr. Rossi,"
he said, his voice smooth and nonchalant.
"He believes you must be terribly tired after such a long day watching his bar. He extends his invitation to join him inside, if you're amenable."
He studied the man's face, searching for the smirk of a threat or the confidence of a trap. But there was none. It was the certainty that unsettled him. Not the message, the casualness of it, like they'd been expecting him, like they'd known he was there all along. Lucas took the tray slowly. The bartender turned as if to leave, then paused and looked back.
"Oh,"
he added, almost as an afterthought.
"Mr. Rossi also asks, politely of course, that you refrain from contacting your office. He's confident your calls will go unanswered tonight.
He smiled again, gave a polite dip of his head, and disappeared into the dark. Lucas stared after him. The street felt colder than before. He reached for his phone. 1 bar. He tried the encrypted line. No answer. He switched networks, dialed another number, then another. Still nothing. He checked signal strength. The bars were there. The network was functioning, but no one picked up. 5 numbers, 10 minutes, all silence. The kind of silence that didn't come from jamming or interference. It came from absence, from empty desks, unanswered lines, and a creeping sense that tonight he might truly be on his own. The silence in the car thickened. The bar across the street blinked in warm defiance. Lucas looked down at the coffee. It was still steaming gently, rich and fragrant. His instincts screamed to throw it out, but his hands didn't listen. He drank. Lucas stepped out of the car slowly, joints crackling from too many hours of stillness. The street outside remained hushed, every surface painted in shades of orange and rust beneath the old sodium lamps. The air, now cool and sharp, nipped at his neck, carrying with it that peculiar stillness only found in the deepest part of the night. A few leaves drifted along the sidewalk, skimming past his shoes like they were in a hurry to be elsewhere. He closed the car door with a soft click, the interior light fading behind him. The tray with the coffee and biscuits sat untouched on the passenger seat. The bartender's voice still lingered, unbothered, confident. Lucas locked the door out of habit, though some part of him suspected no one on this street would dare touch it. Each step toward the bar felt deliberately slow, like he was being pulled forward not by choice but by inevitability. The amber glow spilling from its windows should have felt warm, inviting even. But instead, it struck him as theatrical, like a set piece, perfectly staged. His gaze flicked toward the door. It was already opening. A doorman, heavy-set, stone-faced, and well-tailored, stood waiting. He looked like a bouncer from a noir film, complete with black gloves and a vacant stare. Lucas nodded in acknowledgement. The man gave no response, merely stepped aside to let him pass. Inside, the warmth hit him like a curtain. Not temperature, ambience. The muted tones of soft jazz, clinking glassware, and subdued laughter melted together in a haze of cultivated comfort. The bar was every inch what Darius wanted it to be, elegant, precise, forgettable in its perfection. Lucas noted everything, the grain of the polished walnut floors, the antique brass lamps, the half-melted candles at every table. There was no bar menu. Of course there wasn't. The air carried hints of bergamot, cigar smoke, and aged whiskey. Conversation here was quiet, almost reverent, as if those present were afraid their secrets might stain the leather booths. Lucas scanned the room discreetly. No one reacted to him, not the 2 men in matching cufflinks near the piano, not the silver-haired woman sipping something green through a black straw. He recognized 3 faces immediately, from old surveillance photos and long-forgotten cases. Criminals, or close enough, but none gave him so much as a glance. Like he belonged. A hostess appeared at his side without a word. She was young, stylish, posture impeccable. She didn't ask who he was, didn't ask if he had a reservation. She simply turned and began walking toward the back, expecting him to follow. Lucas did. The hallway beyond the curtain was narrower, cooler in tone and temperature. Framed lithographs adorned the walls, European cityscapes, all nighttime scenes, none labeled. Every step on the thick rug beneath them was silent. Cameras were tucked discreetly into the ceiling corners, their lenses glossy and still. She stopped at a door, mahogany, polished to a mirror shine with no handle. She knocked once. The door opened inward without a sound. Lucas stepped inside. The office was part study, part power statement. A floor-to-ceiling bookcase loomed behind the desk, filled with tomes no one read, but everyone respected. The desk itself was modern, black lacquer with a glass overlay, cables routed beneath the floor, a minimalist lamp, a decanter, a single fountain pen on a leather blotter. There was no personal clutter, nothing sentimental. Darius Rossi stood behind the desk, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He looked like someone who had never been unprepared in his life.
Agent,
Darius said smoothly, not looking up.
You're a long way from your usual field office.
Lucas didn't reply. Darius gestured with his free hand.
Sit. You've been out there a while. I figured either you'd freeze in that car or fall asleep and miss your chance.
Lucas remained standing.
You knew I was watching.
Darius set one glass down and finally looked at him. His eyes were sharp, alert, amused.
Of course. You're good. Don't get me wrong. Subtle. Patient. But I don't run a place like this without eyes on my sidewalk.
Lucas stepped forward slowly.
Then why the invitation?
Hospitality.
Darius replied with a shrug.
Or curiosity. Depends on the moment.
He motioned again to the seat. Lucas hesitated, then sat, back straight, coat unbuttoned just enough for access to his sidearm. Not a threat, but not relaxed either. Darius took his own seat, sipped, watched.
You think I'm dirty?
He said almost fondly.
You've been told I'm laundering money, maybe worse. But here's the thing. People like you're pattern hunters. You stare long enough at noise, you start to see faces.
Lucas held his gaze.
Then you have nothing to worry about.
Darius laughed. It was warm and genuine.
I like you. You're polite. That's rare these days.
Lucas didn't smile.
You're not concerned about what I'll report?
You can report whatever you want.
Darius said evenly.
No one's listening.
Lucas's shoulders stiffened.
Is that a threat?
Darius didn't answer right away. His gaze shifted. Calm, certain, just a little colder.
It's a reality,
He said.
There are things in motion now that don't stop for reports.
He took another sip.
Things are changing, Agent. You feel it too, don't you? Like reality's just off by a beat. Like something's breathing on the back of your neck, but you can't quite catch it.
Lucas didn't respond, but his jaw tightened. Darius leaned back in his chair, one arm draped loosely over the backrest.
Enjoy the drink,
He said.
while it's still safe to do so.
Lucas looked down at the untouched scotch. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, a low vibration hummed beneath the floorboards, like the building itself was bracing for impact. Darius's smile vanished. He stood abruptly, hand darting toward his inner jacket pocket. Lucas's instincts kicked in. He moved for his sidearm, rising halfway from the chair. But Darius wasn't aiming at him. His eyes locked on something behind Lucas. Lucas turned, just in time to catch a blur of light hissing through the air. A glowing orb slammed into Darius's chest. The sound it made wasn't like a gunshot or a taser. It was something deeper, a low-frequency pulse that vibrated through the very architecture of the room, a hum that passed through Lucas's ribs like sound through glass. Time stuttered. The windows buzzed in their frames. Darius was flung backward, clearing the desk entirely, his body smashing into the bookshelf behind him, with Darius collapsed in a heap, limbs twisted, unmoving. Lucas's training overrode the panic. His sidearm already half drawn. He moved to raise it, eyes sweeping the room, but he never got the chance. A second orb appeared in a flicker of blinding motion. It struck him low in the side. The impact wasn't sharp, wasn't blunt, it was total. It bypassed his flesh, his bones, and went straight into his nervous system. White-hot electricity surged from his core outward as if his blood had been swapped with static. He gasped as his knees buckled and crashed backward into a side table, sending polished wood and metal to the ground with a crash. His weapon clattered away. The room was wrong now. The lights had changed, no longer flickering, but steady and too bright, as if the bulbs had been swapped with searchlights. The edges of his vision pulsed in and out, everything warped slightly, like heat mirages bending the air. Lucas crawled to one elbow, blinking through tears. Sweat poured from his temples. Every breath came as a shallow gasp. He looked toward the door and saw it. Something moved into the office. No footsteps, no sound. It simply glided. Not floating, but not walking either. Its movement was smooth in a way that felt designed, not natural. Like watching frames of film stitched together too seamlessly. It was small, child-sized, but wrong in every way. Its limbs were too long, its torso too narrow, and its skin the color of pale slate, sheened faintly as if damp. It walked forward with unsettling precision, silent and smooth, each step measured like it had been rehearsed. The head was large and hairless, its oversized black eyes swallowing the dim reflections of the room. A thin neck supported it, too long, too still, giving the impression of something designed to watch, not speak. There was no nose, no visible mouth, just presence. It tilted its head at him, slowly. No malice, no emotion. Just observation. Lucas wanted to yell, to curse, to demand answers, but his jaw wouldn't obey. His limbs trembled, not from pain, but from some induced paralysis that his body didn't understand. Another figure followed behind the first, then a third. 3 of them now, each nearly identical. One raised its right hand. The glove shimmered faintly, seams along its surface unfolding like petals under pressure. From its palm, a soft blue glow pulsed, steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat from another reality. Lucas's thoughts fractured. He tried to blink, but time slipped every time he did. He turned his head, effort monumental, toward the far end of the room. Darius, still crumpled, unmoving, his glass had spilled across the floor, a blooming stain of amber against the carpet. Is he dead? There was no visible wound, no blood, no smoke, just stillness. Lucas couldn't think straight. Thoughts came in fragments, images, echoes of training manuals, of briefing rooms, of empty safe houses and burned documents. His fingers twitched against the floor. Shapes moved around him, silent, smooth, moving, too fluid, too deliberate. He couldn't lift his head, could barely blink. His limbs had stopped listening. His breath came in short, panicked pulls. One of them leaned closer. He didn't see its face this time, just the eyes, vast and black and depthless, staring down into him like pits carved into glass. There was no expression, no breath, no sound. Just presence, then white, all-consuming, like falling into silence. When he opened his eyes again, everything was white. There was no sound, no ceiling, no floor, just white.